Hi, in this video it explains how Agile Scrum can be properly set up in education. You will learn about relevant steps in a pre-grading process that are carried out by university staff and how to interpret an abstract user story table, an AUST, and Moshkov priorities. We will focus on how an abstract user story table is used to represent generally applicable educational building blocks in a course. Secondly, it is explained how grading priorities are incorporated by a stakeholder and a product owner into AUST. Thirdly, it is explained how task type names are specified for educational building blocks in a course and user story points are incorporated to express educational study load weights. Let's get started. Firstly, we're going to discuss the abstract user story table.
An AUST is used in education to represent generic building blocks in a course that are ought to be learned by students. For convenience, the same hierarchical units of epic, user story and task as in a regular UST as available in Scrum tools such as Jira are being employed. For clarity, to differentiate the terms in an abstract UST from a concrete UST, type is added. In order to exemplify for a course that aims to deliver a professional product like a website, an example of a concrete epic is the Amazon.com website that was once built and nowadays exists, or website name .nl that is yet to be built by a student team. An example of an abstract epic type in this case is the generic concept of a website with the generic user story types front end and back end being educational building blocks, how to build the front end and the back end for a website respectively. An example of task type would be educational instructions on how to develop a button in the front end.
Now let's talk about grading priorities.
Grading priorities are being used to differentiate the importance of different user stories or different tasks. What we use commonly is Moshkov priority, with the M being must, the S being should, the C being could and the W being would, as can be seen in the Wikipedia webpage for example. If we use a semaphore notation like the must in red, the should in yellow and the could in green and the would in blue, then the representation becomes more clear to the students that the red items are the minimum requirements to pass the course, and the yellow and the green and the blue are items for more advanced students that want to get high grades like 7, 8, 9.
Let's combine it. Now we're going to talk about the abstract user story table with grading priorities.
When we have an abstract user story table with educational building blocks that are ought to be learned by students in a course, it's important to use the Moshkov priority scheme to set the expectations of students. Students will get individual grades and team grades. At the top left you can see that the team grade is preliminarily determined by the stakeholder, who sets priorities in the epic types and user story types by using the colors. The stakeholder does not interfere with the task type, so the stakeholder determines the team grade that is going to be awarded by the student teams. At the top right you see that the product owner indicates the task type's priorities with the color scheme. The product owner does not interfere with the epic types and the user story types. He is responsible for the individual grades that students will get in a team. This is logical because the product owner has more contact and is technically coaching the students. It's important to integrate both priorities at the start of a course so that students have absolute clarity what is expected from them. At the bottom you see that the table was integrated for the students. It should be clear that the individual grade is derived from the rightmost column and the team grade is derived from the left columns. Note that U11 in this case has been labeled as red. This is however not obvious It can also be labeled as green, depending on the stringency that is applied in the course. Red will be more stringent, so teams will get a failing grade, and green will be more liberal, teams passing the course.
Now you will learn how the product owner adds data to the AUST.
Before starting a course, it's very important that the product owner adds task type names and user story points to the abstract user story table, so that everything is clear. The task type names should be clear names for the educational building blocks that ought to be learned in a course. These are generic, and these names will be used by the student teams in their concrete user story tables to indicate what the teams are doing. The estimated story points will also be added by the product owner. Different tasks may have different complexities, so it's good, for example, to use Fibonacci series to express the levels of complexities, as you can see in the right column.
In this video, you've learned that in education, a grading system is often initiated by university staff in a so-called pre-grading process by carrying out a sequence of relevant steps, and that an abstract user story table contains epic, user story and task building blocks that are written down with generic names that are expected to be learned by a student to conform educational goals within a course. Mascov priorities indicate precisely to a student team as well to an individual student what is needed to pass in a course. Thanks for watching.